So, welcome to the June Be the Spark movement meeting. And today we're talking about travel and how travel can change our lives, give us a new perspective, um, leave us in gratitude for where we call home, and so much more. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to give the floor to you guys just to introduce yourselves and tell us about one or two places that you've traveled that has actually left an impact on you and makes you crave traveling or learning more about people. So I'm going to call on you first, Becky.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Wells Phillips, author of Hating Self and Loving Self and Butterfly Blossoms. And I really like staying home. I'm a real homebody and I like to travel locally. But I do remember a trip in high school, a missionary trip to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where we went to Guaynabo and worked with this preacher at this like seminary missionary type place. And I was shocked at how beautiful and rich everything was in San Juan. But then we took this bus all the way out to Guaynabo, and I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. I know how to spell it, but it was like going to the slums. It was just going back in time, and there were like shacks and just middle of nowhere. And I guess it just blew my mind that you could have such a difference in, wealth versus not wealth. And so I spent a week there and met a lot of people. And I guess it made me have more of an appreciation of what I personally have. But then I also realized that disparity is the same here in the United States of America. You don't have to go far to see the difference in the have and have not. So I've always tried to uh, have relationships with people of all diverse cultures, status, religions, and things like that. And so that has made me want to be a better person and keep my eyes open to the world around me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Emily, would you like to share next?
Hi everyone. I'm from the UK, and I don't know if being from the UK has something to do with this, but I've personally been quite an adventurous spirit throughout my life, and something wants me to get off this island and go traveling. And I have done a huge amount of traveling. I probably won't go through the amount of places that I've been to because we'd probably be here for the entire time of this whole podcast or conversation. And so, yeah, my daughter had to come home from school recently. She just started senior school, so she's 11, or she turned 12 yesterday. She started senior school, and they had to do a project and talk about all the different countries that they'd been to. And so she listed the countries that she'd been to, and then it said, now list the countries that your parents have been to. And she came home and she said, Mum, my teacher was just blown away. Like, you and Dad have been to so many places. Like, they couldn't believe how many places you've been to. I have to say that every single place that I go to has a huge impact on me. And I think that, yeah. I've always struggled with the whole concept of home anyway. I moved 10 times before I was 10 years old, so I lived in 10 different houses before I was 10 years old, and I've lived in a countless number of houses since. And although I've kind of remained largely located in a relatively small area of the UK. Like I say, I have travelled and travelled and travelled and travelled. The first time I went travelling alone, I was 26 years old. I'm now 44, almost 45. And I went away for almost a whole year on my own. And it was life-changing. Absolutely 100% life-changing. I'd say it was the start of a huge awakening within me of the difference in cultures that we can experience around the world, and yeah, compassion. Just a huge amount of compassion was awoken within me in that moment, and I think that's led me to where I am today. So yeah, when I saw that this conversation was all about travel, I just knew I had to jump in and get involved. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. And Terry.
Yeah, I so appreciate, Becky, what you were saying about the differences in the economic thing, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But I do recognize that in the US, you see that more than you do in Europe. Me living the second half of my life in Germany, seeing everybody I've been in contact with pretty much on a regular basis or at all is middle class. And yeah, there's variety in the things they have. Like there's some people that drive Mercedes and some people drive, like me, drive a 20-year-old Volkswagen, but there's still not that much difference in that. But I've traveling around, I have seen different situations, and yeah, since I've traveled more in Europe than I've seen more countries in Europe than my husband, who's German, has seen, and likewise, he's been to more states than I've been to. So we have a joke about that, and I've seen more, well, not more countries than states, but almost as much. I've been a lot of different places because it's so close. Germany borders 16 countries, so you can in 2 hours be in France from, or like from the West Coast. I lived an hour away from France, and then now I'm more on the eastern side of Germany, and there's Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic and Poland on that end, both of which I've been to briefly, but haven't really spent. But I've done a lot of traveling around, and I do get an appreciation for traveling around Europe versus traveling around the US, because everything in the US, you can go from one side of the country to the other and everything pretty much looks the same. At least it does to me. And the differences in the architectures in different places is still kind of mind-boggling and refreshing for me to just drive, 2 hours and see something that looks totally different. Yeah, the first time I traveled on my own was 1 week. I went to Greece. This was 25 years ago, and I had planned on going on vacation with a friend, and she at the last minute couldn't go. And I thought, what do I do? And she said, "What? Maybe you check with the travel agents." And she had an agent she worked with and said they have those little package tours, and you can get something, and it's not very expensive, and you'll meet a lot of people. And so I did, and I spent a week in Greece, and it was just amazing, just for me to be alone all day, not have to think in the morning when I get up, what time are we going to breakfast? I just went when I was hungry. I walked to the beach when I was ready to go to the beach, and I decided to take a trip. I thought to myself, it was so amazing at that, not even to think about what you're going to do next. Just I found myself doing things. But that's what intrigued me the first time I went to Greece, was that there's so much history there, and the culture still goes on this ancient history, or the way they think, and their openness was really enchanting to me. And yeah, shortly after I met my husband, I suggested we go to Greece, and he was open to it. He said, "Oh, that sounds cool." I was always into Greek mythology as a kid.
Oh,
And
yeah.
every year now we find ourselves where we're going to go, and if we have the money to travel a distance, we'll go to Greece. So,
It's
yeah.
on my bucket list, right, Neil?
It is.
It is on our bucket list. So who wants to go next, Neil or John?
I'll go.
Okay.
All right. So the two places I want to pick in here, I'm trying to stay away from places we went that you may say. So the first one I'll say is Russia. I went to Russia about 10 or 11 years ago with my father. and really didn't know what to expect. That was kind of my first out of country experience versus like Mexico or Bahamas or something like that. And the interesting thing was that the people we went with and the people we met over there were able to see a lot of the culture, a lot of the families over there, went to some berry farms and things like that. It was, to me, it was very interesting. 2 points. One point was it's true that the people there really do think of Mother Russia. I mean, like they think of the country before themselves almost. And that was, it was a little bit different, but when you go on the dairy farms, you kind of see how they work. And when you talk to them through a translator and what they're doing, why they're doing it, well, it's my father did it, my mother did it. Here's my son, he's going to do it too. And it's for the good of the community, which is pretty amazing. The other part of the Russia trip is we went to Moscow for some days and we were able to walk around there and see the history and see the old, see some old churches and things like that, and just the history of that area. But the interesting thing about Moscow, for me at least, was that the people there were very inquisitive once they realized who we were, where we were from. What about America? What about this? It's, it's almost like they live a sheltered life, which I'm assuming they do. But the people there were very focused on the country and focused on learning. They were like sponges. They told us, they want to learn about, what's going on over there. What do you guys do? How do you do this kind of stuff? Which is very interesting. Which I think is different than here. The second country I'll mention is I was just there recently with India. And I've certainly been there for a couple of weeks, and it was once again didn't know a whole lot of what to expect, but a little bit. Some good friends over there, so I was able to, felt comfortable, and actually took our middle son Noah with me. He took up half the way through. And interesting thing about that travel and kind of what the differences there here in Russia and everywhere else is they're focused on family. I mean, family. That's it, family. And like their in-laws live with them. They have one of the gentlemen there. Said, "Oh yes, this is my mother who I'd met," and then he had another mother who I'd met in the U.S. one time. But it was like their family's so close, and like, hey, this is my sister, but it's not a biological sister, but it's his sister. And it was just really amazing the warmth and caring and sense of family they have over there. And that evolves into the religious beliefs. Like I've never been to a place where you see cows walking around in the middle of the road, but don't hurt the cow. You can't eat beef, and if anybody actually runs over a cow, they probably get killed. To be honest with you, but just just the sense of I was very comfortable there, and their focus on family, love, and that evolves into the environment, to the animals, the Mother Earth, and things like that. And it was 113, but it felt spiritually very warm there, just because of the focus on family. And it was really interesting. And obviously, I know this discussion is not about food and that kind of stuff, but obviously the foods were different areas. But really, the sense of family, the sense of pride the Indian people have in their family themselves and also in nature was very inspiring. I was able to go by the Taj Mahal, which was just really fascinating. So hope that's what you're looking for, Carrie. But
No,
that's my 2 picks.
it's your experience and what you get from it. So it's
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. And to not to step over you, I'm sorry, but the India thing was not that Russia wasn't fun, but India was more poignant. Just the fact of the importance of family, the importance of people around you that you love and trust, and they feel the same way about you. I really on home with that. And not that I didn't already have it, but it was like a reinvention of it, if you want to say it, or a realization, maybe is a better term, of
Yeah.
how important your family and your friends are around you now. And your friends are really family too. You love them. You love them just, well, not just like your family, but you love your friends. And we all have some friends that I'm sure we love more or not. And, I have friends that I probably call my brother or sister. Over there, it's different. They're very communicative about it. So it's made me feel warm. Look at that way.
I'm very welcomed. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. John, would you like to share your travels and maybe one or two places that you've traveled?
Yeah, I was late joining. I'm sorry about that.
You're fine.
That's so the one thing that just and briefly what I heard, the one place I can share, it's been a while back, in Navy years, I would share Djibouti, Africa,
Mm.
um, because I think maybe 20ish years old. And it was life changing in the fact of you think, yeah, you see some bad things or have bad reference points in the life you live. But when you see that level of poverty and strife,
Mm.
and it's I gotta say it's just it's shaking to your soul at 20 years old to know that there can be that much of a difference in where you from and what your complaints are about life, and see what these people were actually, they're trying to live day to day or hour to hour. And that was very life changing for me. So it's something that I've just held, um, since then, actually, and being grateful for what you have, and the opportunities you have, from that perspective of changing outlooks. Um, and there's a few other places I've been. I guess we'll just move on with the conversation. But there's other reference points of, Thailand and Australia, which are on happier notes.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest impact on myself was Djibouti, Africa.
Yeah. Now you can share whatever you want to share. I mean, I think the good stuff is just as important as the stuff that like takes us back. So, well, my favorite place to travel, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, was Paris, France. And when I got to Paris, I felt like I was at home. I'd always wanted to go to Paris, and it just like it felt like I was always supposed to be there. So, I'll just say that I still like think about how cool it would be to go sit on the side of the curb and all these little cafes and just watch people go by and just feel that whole experience. So it was just beautiful. And of course, you'd hear, oh, they don't like Americans there, et cetera. But we felt completely welcome. And as long as I think um, you try to speak their language or you try to, be a part of their culture, that they're warm and welcoming. The other place that I've been, and I've been several places too, but the other place I've been that had a huge impact on me was Bali. And Bali is very community oriented and just they take care of each other and extremely poor, extremely poor. Nobody even wears shoes, which, I'm good with that. Um, but what really amazed me the most is like traffic is horrific and everybody's like zooming in and out and they're on scooters and there are no fingers flying and no cussing and no anger and people are like, okay, come on. And there's babies on scooters and whole families packed together on scooters. And I'm terrified because I'm like, where's the car seat? All the stuff that we're used to here in America. But they take care of each other. The whole community has to, um, I guess more like family, has to come together and approve your marriage. So you get everybody's input on your marriage, which may have benefits and may not. But that's just how they do things. And they honor each generation. So, the grandparents live with the parents that live with the kids, that live with the grandkids. So they're all in community together. And they honor their past, their history so much. And the temples, to go to the temples and feel that energy at the temples and how they take care of them. Um, we went to like the mother temple and there was like an 85, I don't know how old he was, but he was probably 85 years old. And he was out walking me and Madeline and the other lady that we were with. And just, they're just connected to the earth and connected to each other. And I think that's so beautiful. And yeah, I came home with a greater appreciation of connection with family and friends, and of course, just a great appreciation for life in general. So Desiree has popped in. Desiree, do you want to share with us your experience with travel or anything that has had a profound effect on you?
Had to find the unmute button. So as far as traveling, I mean, Gary knows that's what I do with my job. I travel all 19 counties here in this region. So I do a lot with that. And then I just recently went to Louisiana for my granddaughter's first birthday. And then after that, I went to Boston for the first time and saw a bunch of stuff over there. So I love traveling. Sometimes it's a drag, and more sometimes with work, I'm overwhelmed with having to go to certain places and dealing with all of the madness on the road. It, but I come from up north, so the madness from up north to coming here is completely different. It's slower pace than up north, so I had a lot of adjustment when I moved here in 2003. But I have adapted, but not completely, because I find myself sometimes wanting to rush down the road. And then I'm reminded when I get behind that slow person, yeah, you're not going anywhere today fast. So I'm hoping that's what you wanted. That's what I got for you. I came in late, so my apologies. So
No, you're fine. I think that brings up another aspect of it too, is that even in our community, there are huge differences in how people live. Like I think about Desiree and I went up to Burnsville after Hurricane Helene, which was completely decimated. But the people there were so kind. And so, I mean, they're praying for me and they have no home to go to. Is that kind of community and the way they live. And you come to Asheville and it's just not like that. You know, there's a sense of entitlement in Asheville. And of course, going up the East Coast, the buildings, just the structures and the way people treat each other. You know, I've been to New York and Maine and all up the East Coast and all the way down to Florida, and people just are different, even in regions. And there's different expectations in
that's
each
how,
of these
that's
regions.
how I felt when I went to Boston. Like, I'm used to saying hello to people, and I would say hello to people, and they look at me like I had a double head. Um, it's a culture thing as well here. Like we're more friendlier, if that's even a word.
It is now.
Yeah. So I find it I find it interesting when I travel, like you said, to different regions, because I do that with work. And like yesterday, I was in Polk County, and a lady was talking to me about the devastation that happened. You go 5 miles from where I was, and it's complete devastation. And 5 miles, complete devastation the other direction. And she said, and here we were blessed, and we still have what we have, and we're able to help out. So it's just interesting. And I find the more and more that I travel to different areas, the welcoming versus, I don't want to say not so welcoming, because everybody's welcoming. It's just you get a different vibe when you go to different areas.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I'm just going to open the floor up and y'all just share your stories and share what impacts you and um yeah, just how traveling.
I'm just curious. A big reason I joined today was so traveling a bit more nowadays, and I've traveled for work in different facets for quite a while. And there's a thing that I'm curious if it's just a me thing anymore, or getting old and impatient and all those things. Um, but an airport to me right now is chaos. I don't know if you all experience the same things, but it seems like we mentioned earlier, there was a word thrown around about entitlement and how folks feel, and I mean, I think everyone's buried in their phones, they're buried in themselves. It's like common courtesy is out the window, and I get very frustrated anymore when I travel. So that's my 2 cents, and it's probably a me thing, but I just was curious on anyone else's perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely not a you thing.
I have a experience from about a week ago when we were flying back from Athens, Greece to Frankfurt, Germany, and there's the big deal about the check-in and the non-check-in, and so they of course, as they always do, I don't know if they do it in the States the same way, but we're fully booked, and if you want to take your carry on and check it in, you can do it at no additional cost. And so they apparently didn't get enough. So they stopped this lady and asked if they could weigh her luggage, or told her she had to weigh in her carry-on, because they wanted to make sure that it was the proper size and measure it and everything. And she was indignant. She says, I am not going to check in my luggage. I've lost my luggage 2 times from the last time I flew, and blah, 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 blah. And she threw a fit. They did take her to weigh her luggage, and then it was acceptable. And then I saw her. I love watching people like this, because I saw her a few feet over at or a few sections over in the boarding area, and she's venting to her husband, and her husband's just sitting there looking at his phone. And the next guy, they did the same thing, and the employee says, I'm just doing my job. And they asked these 2 guys if they could check theirs, and they said, it's under 5 kilos. It's definitely within limit. And the guy even picked it up, and they're right across from us. Both times, the 2 people were right across from us. And they lifted it up, and you could tell from the guy lifting it definitely wasn't more than 10 pounds. He just kind of lifted up. But at any rate, the other guys were just, oh, well, here we go. We know it's not too heavy and we're fine. But that lady, she was venting for so long. And you could just see her. I couldn't hear her, but I could see her lips moving. She's going, nee, 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 nee. So yeah, I think that's all the stress. And my husband and I are laughing, thinking, some people just want to be cranky.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just a general way of being in our world today, is people think they're so entitled. And like, I remember coming from when I traveled from Morocco, and then I went to Paris, and everybody in the Paris airport was so nice. And then, of course, I had a 4-hour layover, so I wasn't like frantic. And then I come into the Atlanta airport, and the people in Atlanta were horrific to me. And I had been awake for like 20 hours and traveled, and you're just tired. And the people like checking you through the customs and all were not only the people in line, but the people that were actually working there. And I thought, well, I wonder why people don't want to come to America. And then there's the whole immigrant thing, but that's a whole different thing. But, you come into an international airport, and the people working there are just really ugly to you for whatever reason. And I was so disappointed to be coming back into my country and being treated like that. So I can't imagine how foreigners feel when they come in here.
I think this is a really great metaphor for the whole world in general, and in terms of how you can stay centered and tune in with yourself, rather than constantly looking to the external for like validation on how you should be feeling. Because I recently did a big trip. I traveled with my two daughters for almost a month in India, and that was big, you know, like there was people coming up to me like, "Oh, it's so amazing that you've brought your two daughters to India as a single mum." And yeah, I was quite kind of proud of myself that I navigated all of that. And I'd been to India 3 times before, so I have a big affinity to India, and it's a very, very welcoming place, which is one reason why I had no issue with taking my daughters there. Um, as Neil had already said for us earlier. And then I went traveling on my own for a further week. So I came back to the UK, dropped my kids with their dad, and then I went for a further week on my own to Spain and Portugal. And I was in the airport in Malaga, and I I remember thinking how crazy it was. I'd never seen a dog going through security before, and I saw two dogs going through security. I think in Europe you're allowed to take your animals with you on the plane. Like that is not a thing here in the UK. Like you're not allowed to do that. I've never seen that before anywhere, and I was just like, it was just comedy for me. Like I what I do is I keep my headphones in, so I listen to all of my like podcasts that I want to listen to, or I might listen to my favorite music. And I'm writing my own album at the moment. I'm writing my first ever album of music, and so I actually wrote a song in the Malaga airport, and it was based on the gate number that I had to go to. I don't know. I was just like, oh, how can I entertain myself? Because if you do look outside of yourself and you look at all the crazy going on, like a dog like pooped in front of me in duty-free shop. Like, and the woman looked like horrified. She was so embarrassed that this she had to get her poop bag out and clean up the poop. I was like, what is going on with the world? The world has gone crazy. But I had my headphones in and I was off. I was on a mission. I'm going to my gate. I know where I'm going. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. I know where I'm going. I'm going to keep my focus. And I found out my gate. And it was gate 53, and I was like, gate 53, gate 53. So I just started singing this little melody in my head. And Carrie, I actually sung you this song in private recently. And it's gonna be a hit, guys. It's gonna be a hit. But I just got on with I got on with what I was doing, and like that's the way I kind of feel like I can get on with things now. Like I just don't need to keep looking outside of myself. Like there might be a load of people getting angry over there. There might be a load of people wanting to cause trouble over there. But actually, if I'm standing in the line waiting for my plane and I can feel the energy from somebody stood next to me and it feels like a good energy, I'm going to take my headphones out and I'm going to engage in a conversation, and I'm going to be receptive to that. But yeah, I think that is a really important point. Like you can get dragged into dramas here and dramas there, but actually just stay focused. Where are you going? How do you want to feel? And stick with that lane. So yeah, that was my 2 cents worth for the conversation.
Well, and if y'all want to learn more about Terry or Emily, both of them are on my podcast. So Neil has a call, so he is jumping off. A call from the guys in India, actually. Yeah, and Emily, that makes me think about like how I always go to my journal, right? I carry my journal with me, and instead of having that like I sit down somewhere and I write it all out, and then that helps me go back and go, okay, was that me or was that the craziness of the people around? And do some self-reflection, and sometimes it is quite entertaining. So
Well, I'm gonna have to jump off here too. I think my phone's gonna die. But Emily, thanks for that input, because I'm horrible at that. I'm too much of a worked up guy, but I am gonna try that. I'm really gonna try to focus on me and not the external. That sounds like a very good practice. Um, Hopefully, I can at least make some headway. But I appreciate the perspective. Thank you very much.
John, I'll send some of Emily's songs to you when she gets her album out.
Well, let's start with Gate 53. I'm singing it already.
Well, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.
Yeah, so I love to travel, and I have been, Morocco is a whole different world. And um a friend of mine brought something up to me recently. He says his wife has a savior complex. And so she was down in the islands, and she was like, all these poor children down in the islands, they don't have shoes on, and they're running around, and they're so poor. And I asked him to think, to maybe offer her this, is that one, that's all they know, right? And then also, wouldn't most of us love to be running around on a tropical island half naked all the time? Like, and just try to look at life from their perspective and see like what brings them joy. They're not distracted maybe by phones and cable, and maybe they're living a way more authentic life than we are. And that was my take on that, and taking that step back and going, okay, if I could put myself in that perspective. And I relate to that because when I was in Morocco, the young girls are, fully covered. It's 115 degrees there because we went in June, July last year. And the girls are sitting up under a tree and watching all the guys, all the teenage guys, they're playing in the water, and they're just having a good time, and the girls are sitting there. And my heart is like, oh my gosh, like they need to be out here and enjoying life and being in the water and all that. And, then you have to like shift your perspective and say, this is all they know. This is their choice. This is how they're raised, and just try to look at things from different perspectives.
Yeah, like traveling doesn't have to, you don't have to be going across borders, right? Like Desiree
Yeah.
was saying earlier, like you guys have this humongous country. I know, Terry, you're not in the US, but you're obviously from the US. And it's just like, I've been to the US. I traveled 14 states in 3 weeks. And yeah,
Wow.
it was a big trip. And so like this morning, for example, I woke and I'm in the UK, so it's almost 6 o'clock here in the evening, and it's summer solstice, so it's the longest day in the year. And I woke up about 4:30 in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier, and the birds were calling my name. It's very hot here. We're having a bit of a heat wave at the moment, which is great. We don't get that very often here. And so I knew that I was just going to please myself, and I was just going to get out of bed, and I was going to go out and walk, wherever my feet took me. And I think that traveling is about movement. It's about being open to new experiences, new people. And I probably walked a mile away from my home, and I ended up in a place that I have never, ever been to before. And it was the most beautiful morning. And I wrote a song, and I actually was greeted by my spirit animal, which is a female deer. My name is Emily Doe, but it wasn't the name that I was born with. It was the name that I married into. Although I'm divorced now, I've decided to keep my name because I recognize the importance of the female deer in my life. And a deer was there with me this morning in that field, and I was there all on my own. And I think that that is what traveling is all about. It's about being open to new experiences, open to new people, and being open. Like being open-minded, being open to newness, like coming in, being open to new opportunities, new experiences. And when you live from that open-hearted place, like that is when pure magic can come into your life and grace you with its presence. And it's available in every single moment, of every single day.
You're right.
That's
Right.
how I felt. I feel in one of the classes I took in college, it taught you people watch. So I find myself now still doing that and people watching, and it's just interesting in what you see when you're out around different areas, different cultures. And you definitely do get some humor out of it. And you just have to remind yourself, oh, okay,
There's
those type of situations. And you
That's
just
right. If you love people watching, you should come to the UK and go to Glastonbury. It's one of my favorite places to go to, and it's one of the best places to go people watching in the world, I promise you.
one
That
day
is on my bucket
I will
list
make
too.
it. Yeah, one day I will
Yeah.
make it to UK for sure. But it's just interesting, and I just sit and watch sometimes and just and that's where I reflect, and I'm like, what tree did they fall from today? Because this is, and that's my humor, because I find humor in just about anything, because that's what keeps my brain going. Because if not, then I will walk around a miserable person. And I don't want to be miserable, so just find humor. And that's what I say to myself when I see something. I'm just like, oh, you fell from a tree today and knocked your head. Um, and that just helps to calm yourself so that you're not getting sucked into whatever drama they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't help, and you do get sucked in, and you're just like later reflecting, this is what I do, later reflecting, like, yeah, I fell for that trap. Um, and got sucked into that rabbit hole. So it's being, like Carrie said, and everybody has said, being mindful of your surroundings, your areas, and just knowing that just because your view is different from theirs doesn't mean you can't mesh with them. It's getting back to our roots of being okay with not agreeing to disagree, and how people, and that's, this job has taught me to be humble, be mindful, and enjoy people watching.
I've always loved people watching. It's fascinating. Um, I used to work in a mall, like food court thing, years and years ago when, gosh, I was probably 16. And just to watch the people walk down the mall. And this was long before we were all distracted by our cell phones, right? But like how they walk, and then when there's like an attractive person coming by, and how they change, they're like, people watching is fascinating.
It was the same, Carrie. I used to work in a place called the Cap Shack, and it was
Uh-huh.
on the corner of a mall. So you had, like, we don't call it a mall, we call it a shopping centre, but so you saw people coming from every direction, and we were there with our caps on, just like, look, and the people watching, it's so much fun.
Uh,
Part of what my husband and I do, because he's more introvert than I am, but we're both a little bit internal oriented, and we'll go places, but we'll go sit off in the corner somewhere and watch people. That's our thing. And last night there was a little wine event in this wine town near us. So they have there's like 20 wineries in this one town, little small mom and pop places. And you can buy a ticket and you can get a tasting at 10 of them or something like that. And we just went and stopped at one, had a glass of wine, and watched people walking by. And then the people at that. But it was so much fun just watching, and the dog watching, the people watching, all that. It's just amazing.
yeah,
Fun.
and it's different in every country that I've been to. Like sitting in Paris, and everybody's like rushing by, and
Yeah, Paris seemed very fast paced to me compared
yeah,
to what I'm used to the rest of Europe.
it was. Even Morocco is pretty fast paced. Bali was fast paced until it wasn't. So either you're going somewhere and that's really fast paced, or you are somewhere and you get to be in the moment. So that had a nice balance. Spain has a nice balance too, I think, because the guy that was hosting us, he was like, let's go have a light lunch. And then we would sit down and there would be food across the entire table. And we're like, this is not light, for one. But like we could sit there for 2 hours and eat and have a conversation, and the waiter isn't like coming back trying
Rushing
to
you
get
out
you
the
to move
door.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a nice contrast to hear.
That's why I felt with Greece when we got settled in there and realized the beauty of having a 2 hour lunch. You sip at your drink, you eat slowly, you talk,
It's connection.
and watch the world go by. Yeah. Watch the beach, watch the waves. And they're constantly saying, slow down, cigar, cigar. And just yeah, don't be in a rush.
That's
I
how it
felt
is with me here. Because, like I said, I'm from up north, so everything's
Mhm.
fast paced. It's, go, go, go. And I moved here, and I literally had a local tell me, slow down. And I just looked at him like,
Take a breath.
what are you, like, who are you to tell me to slow down? But I reflected on that and appreciated that person telling me, because I had to switch gears. I had to change my thought pattern because I was no longer up north in the hustle and bustle. I was here in the south where we're slow, and you become accustomed to it. So, but like I said, it's easy to get back into that mind frame when I'm out on the road. And sometimes I just get behind somebody and I'm just like, please remember, the left lane is for the people that know they are going to get a ticket. The right lane is for those that don't want the ticket. Like, come on, work with me here, please. Like, just get back over in your lane.
Yeah.
But then that's my reminder. You're gonna slow down, and not be hustle bustle.
Yeah. My favorite thing when we went to the Netherlands was we were in The Hague, and it started to rain because we were on a little trek to go to the coast. We wanted to go see the Ferris wheel. And so it started to rain, so we went into this little corner cafe. And the food was phenomenal. We just ordered a little like slice of apple cake or something, and they had Cool Whip on top of it. And I was like, oh my God, like just a taste, to slow down enough to taste your food. And then the feel of everybody around, because they weren't all on their phones, and they were all, there was like a 90-year-old man and a 30-year-old man having a conversation, and just a real feel of community. And I was like, I like this. Like, that felt good to me. So
It's so important to disconnect when you can, because and be present in the moment. That was another thing I learned in college, is just to be present and more. Forget where we grew up in an era that didn't have technology and you were present,
right.
and how things have evolved, and we are quick to go back to that, and that goes back to the hustle and bustle. It's just, it's be more present, and I wish there was more of that, because it's so important. And me and Carrie just got together not too long ago, and we disconnected from our phones. We just were present with each other, and I think we need to bring that back.
Yes.
Yeah. I arrived in Lisbon on the last leg of my big trip that I had in April, and we arrived on the day when there was a big power cut through the whole of Portugal, the whole of Spain, and half of France. Like, it's kind of unheard of for that to happen, but it happened for a whole, I think it was like over 12 hours
What
power cut.
happened?
The whole of the power went out in the whole of
Oh, the
Portugal,
power.
the whole of the power cut back at the end of April. And I was in Lisbon when that happened. And we were traveling up to a retreat center just two hours north of Lisbon. And so when we arrived, they were like, we're not sure what's happening. It could be the apocalypse. But we haven't got power and we don't know how long it's going to be out for. And it was one of those occasions where we were like, oh, okay, we just need to lean into trust. Like, this is asking us to just slow down and be present with ourselves and not be on our phones. And we sat and we burned candles at nighttime, and we had our oracle cards and we read for each other and we just connected. And it, don't get me wrong, when the power came back on at like 10 to midnight, I was straight on the phone to be like, hey guys, I'm
Right.
fine, I'm alive. But it was just one of those moments where we're like, this is so nice. Like we were able to appreciate it. And I think that's because of who we are and what we're seeking. But as people, the three of us that were together, like there was only three of us at this retreat center. We'd managed to kind of orchestrate it. There was just three of us at a retreat center together, which was mind-blowingly good. However, I imagine being in the city and going through that experience was probably very, very different and quite
That's how it
stressful.
was here after the hurricane. You
Mm.
know, the power, cell phone service, everybody, and it's just interesting
weeks.
seeing, yeah, for weeks. Interesting seeing everybody. Luckily, I had an internet company, and I was telling Carrie this, that literally went up the mountain and kept a generator going so that we would have internet, which was a good thing because families were reaching out to me to be able to connect with other families, and it just was a great thing, and I feel like I was thankful for that, but I at the same time kind of wished I didn't have it.
Yeah.
um you
It's
know
a,
it,
it's a really funny kind of
yeah,
paradoxical thing, isn't it? Because
yeah,
I'm so thankful for the internet. I'm so thankful for this conversation. It wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the internet.
right.
And all of the connections that I've made throughout the world because of the internet and Zoom and Facebook and all the other stuff. However, when you do get that like forced disconnection, it's like a remembrance, isn't it? It's like we
And
have to remember.
it doesn't happen enough. It
Right.
really doesn't. It doesn't happen enough. And sometimes I wish it would happen more. Although, as you can ask Gary
Be
here,
careful what you wish for, Desiree.
it's
Right.
true, but here at my house, you can ask Gary. My cell service is sketch. We rely on just the internet at my house because I don't have good cell service, and we're in 2025. And I'm literally within a big university, and still cell service is sketch. But so I do appreciate that at times, but at times when you're talking to family, it's just like, okay, because you don't have good cell service, so you're hearing every other word. And so yeah, it's just interesting. And like literally 5 minutes from my house, a big university. And that's the joyous thing of being in the mountains, but sometimes it can be a real drag.
I went to India, obviously I mentioned that before, and it was interesting because everybody in India, i- although they live a completely different lifestyle to the way I live, or on for the most part, everybody has one of these. Everybody has one of these. Everybody has a mobile contract, data, internet connection, the power to fuel one of these. And it is absolutely mind-boggling crazy. Like going into the biggest slum in the world in Mumbai and witnessing the difference, the way of life. I mean, I felt I had to take the rest of the day to process how I felt from being in that situation. But those people, um, they've lived their whole life there, so they don't necessarily feel bad for the way they live. They don't
Disconnected.
feel
Yeah.
that they don't feel that they have bad lives. You know, they might not have a bed to sleep on. They might not have running water in their home.
Smartphone.
But they have a smartphone and they watch YouTube and they get through it by watching YouTube all day long. And it's crazy. Like we live in a crazy world.
We do live in a crazy world. We do live in
Yeah.
a crazy world.
Yeah, that was clear. I've got pictures of people who they work in the biggest laundromat in the world, and they wash and iron clothes all day long from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night. Then there's 5,000 people living in a very, very small space. They all have a phone. They're all getting through it by watching YouTube all day long.
I
Destructive.
found it interesting. I've only been out of the country once, and that was to Punta Cana. And that was an experience in itself. It was a huge culture shock, and how they treated their workers versus people that are foreigner. Their own people, they treated like crap, but yet here I am being treated well, and I couldn't understand that. Like, it just blew my mind. And I did, while I was there, my best to treat the workers, with dignity and respect, including giving them water, which they were deprived of. And they just didn't understand how this person could give them a bottle of water for nothing. They wanted to trade me with something. I said, absolutely not. Like, I don't want your stuff. Like, I just don't understand how a culture that I'm coming into versus me as an American. And it made me feel grateful that I don't have to deal with that here, and that's my only experience out of my own safety zone. So I can't base it off of anything else that anybody else has gone through, because I that was it was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, I think. Do you want to say something else, Desiree?
Oh, no.
Okay. I think that's the one thing that if I could change the world and our education system, and education we'll be talking about next month, but I would require people to travel. Just as a human being, we should all travel and see these people who don't have a bed to sleep in and experience that, and then see the beauty of one of my most phenomenal things that I've experienced is going into a church in Europe. Terry's got to go, and yeah, thank you, Terry, for always being here, and we'll see you soon. We'll wrap it up soon. But going into the church and experiencing a church that was built with intention is what it felt like. And the feeling of hundreds of years, I'm sure, of being used as a church. And I crave going into these churches and feeling that feeling. And I think I don't know, I just think it's important that everybody travels so they can come back into their life and be grateful for anything. And I think that gratitude would definitely change people's way of being in the world. So,
I agree. I agree 100%. I mean it, but that's here as well,
oh
and
yeah.
as well as I do carry here in this area after Helene, and seeing people, you know, lose everything, and like you said, still praying for you as a person. It's just like, I can't get my head to that sometimes, because it's just like, but that's what makes it such an incredible community, is that the resilience and being able to persevere and overcome and not fall victim, and be a sounding board for other people that are experiencing traumas like that. And that's in other cultures and countries as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important point, Desiree, and this is probably going to be my kind of parting gift in this conversation, is that so often we're told that, especially if you're traveling abroad, especially if you're traveling to places that are far away from where you live, that it's maybe not safe there, or it's maybe there's too much trouble there, or it's too different for you to go there, and that there's a fear story around going to these different places and different cultures. But actually, when you just go to the places that your heart is calling you to, and I know, Carrie, you spoke at the beginning of this message about how Paris was calling you. Like, I'm big into astrology, and there's a place called there's a thing called astrocartography, and like all of us are called to places based on our astrology, and we feel at home in different places, and it's not necessarily always the place that we're born in. It's not always
Right.
necessarily that place that we're going to resonate with the most. And places have energies, they have vibrations. Desiree mentioned it as well. Like every place has a different vibration, and going to the places where you feel comfortable and you feel welcomed and you feel at home, you know, like don't listen to the outside, don't necessarily listen to the news, you know, like you could be the person that goes into a place and just like brings the joy, you know, like smiling at another person when you're out on your walk. It all brings joy to places, and it all helps everybody to feel connected. And I think that's what we're talking about here. It's like connection, you know, like real connection with places, with people, with a vibration. And just, yeah, go and experience what you are here to experience and live what you're here to live, because that's what you know, that's what makes an enriched, enlightened experience on this planet.
A smile goes a long way
It
and
does.
can brighten anybody's day. I am a true believer of that. And my granny taught me the most valuable lesson, and I live to it to this day, is we learn something new every single day, and don't close your mind out to learning something new, because that's when you will become one of them.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
my parting gift. I got to get back to rearranging this house, put an AC in. So it was great joining. Sorry I was late, but that's what I'm
All
in the
good.
middle of doing. It was lovely to meet you, Miss Emily.
Thank you, Desiree. I
Me
love your
too.
picture, by the way, with the sunflowers. Been
Thank
loving
you,
it
thank
all this
you.
time.
Thank you. I would have come on, but I'm a hot mess and I ain't even about that life. So
Well, it is all good. Well, I want to just end and we'll all get off here. Is that I think that's a very good point, Emily, is what vibration we bring to wherever we go. And we need to definitely answer those calls, if at all possible, to travel and meet other people and just share our shine with the world. So travel
absolutely.
on, my friends.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks,
Thanks,
Desiree.
Shay.
See
Lots
y'all
of
soon.
love. Bye bye.
Uh-huh.
Bye.
Bye.